Hi folks, so in this video I'm going to go through some of the stuff that I carry in my pockets, some of the little items like electronics and sanitary gear, that sort of stuff. So this is the second in the video series. In the first one I went through my first aid kit and I went through that in quite a bit of detail because I think the choices that you make with your first aid kit, what the reasons behind carrying different items are really important because obviously it's something that you probably don't use very often, and therefore it's not something that you get a good sense of what's important and what's not. However, the stuff I'm going to go through in this video is pretty straightforward. I don't think it'll vary much from what other people do, but maybe the way I store things or carry things and so forth might be a little bit different. So I'll go through things fairly quickly. Again, I'm still in a cast after an operation, but that's not going to affect things. I'm just sort of sweltering in the heat at the moment. It's still summer here in Australia. So I'll run through the different pockets on the outside of my hiking pack, and as I do that I'll just also show you not just the items that I typically carry in there, but also go through any kits that I have in there, like for example my electronics gear or my bathroom kit. So starting off with the back pocket, this is again pretty typical. Some of the stuff I carry in there, this will vary a bit trip to trip, but the sort of stuff that I'm likely to be carrying on a longer hike, I've got a ground sheet here, which just goes underneath my shelter. I usually have some sort of bag. I'd call it almost like a grey water bag, but it's a bag I carry if I'm going to be needing something for hygiene and that. But I don't want to maybe use my drinking containers. Other things I have in this pocket, I've got usually some sort of bag or bags that I can use for just rubbish that I collect, or maybe rubbish that I generate along the way. So as I'm travelling and eating various dehydrated meals and stuff like that. Sometimes on longer trips this might actually be an op sack, so an odor-proof bag, just so that critters and that don't get into them. Commonly though, I also carry these little biodegradable doggy doo-doo bags, okay, which I just pick up pretty much free from the council stations that you find on most of the coastal walking tracks and things like that. So having some of those is really good, just in case I find any rubbish. And they don't weigh very much, they're just little lightweight bags, but I think they're a useful thing to have. The other thing in my back pockets typically is my tent stakes, but I won't talk about those until I sort of get to looking at shelters and that. And finally, I have my toilet kit in there. So this is part of my broader hygiene kit. And the sort of stuff I have there, I've got a trowel, so this is a deuce of spades. I like the aluminium trowels. They seem to be, I don't know, a bit tougher. I have had a titanium trowel, and it had sort of a serrated edge, so I quite liked it because when you had ground that had a lot of roots and stuff like that, it was quite easy to cut through things. When you're in like these subtropical damp forests where there's a lot of roots and things. However, I did find that the titanium would bend, whereas the aluminium is a lot more rigid. So eventually, the tips and that would bend over. So yeah, I quite like the aluminium. Seems to be a bit better. And similar thing with the tent stakes and that. I find the aluminium tent stakes seem to last a lot longer. So with my toilet kit, I have the trowel, usually some toilet paper. Well, always some toilet paper. I've also started to carry a bidet, so a hiking bidet. This one is okay, but I find it doesn't sort of seem to seal very well with my bottles and that. So I've actually ordered in a different one to try, and I'll see if that makes any difference. But yeah, I think a bidet is a good thing, particularly on longer trips where there's a chance you might run out of toilet paper. In this I've always carried soap, so I have a small block of soap, and this soap, it's a locally made one. It's actually seems to hold up pretty well. It doesn't sort of get all sloppy and fall apart. I think it's made of some sort of clay. It's one of the ingredients. Yeah, it lasts quite a long time. However, something I've decided to add recently, I was carrying a spare bottle of hand sanitizer in here as well, but instead I've got myself some of this Dr. Brommer's to try, okay, which is another type of soap, but it's a liquid soap, so you can use a small amount for hand washing and things like that, but you can also use it for clothes washing and that sort of thing. So yeah, some of that. I don't know whether I'll keep it in that bottle, but something similar size, I guess, or yeah, see how that bottle goes. Anyway, and finally, I've got a couple of these Wassy wipes or whatever they're called. They're basically like a little towelette which you sort of add water to, and they expand into a proper towel. There's also the light load towel, which I've used in the past as well. I don't know which I prefer so far, because I'm only just trying these ones, but I've had reasonable success with that. Even though I usually have something that either a bandana or something like that I use for washing or drying myself, that kind of thing, I think having these is good, because you might want to have something that maybe your bandana or your whatever you happen to be using for wiping yourself, up, gets dirty, and you need something else, or maybe you want to dedicate one of them to the less pleasant jobs and use the other one just for your face and hands and that. Anyway, they weigh next to nothing, so that's fine. Now the whole thing goes into this little bag, which has poop on the outside. Okay, that's made by Toiletries gear, so it's a nice little bag. Again, possibly overkill using a DCF bag versus just a Ziploc bag. However, it's going to last longer, and it gives me a waterproof, some protection for my toilet paper in particular. Nothing else in here really matters, but the toilet paper does. That's all I have in that kit, so I'll give you a weight on that later. But basically, once everything's in there, it just goes into the back pocket of my pack, and yeah, I've got it for when I need it. I do have a few issues with the bowels and that from time to time, so having a good toilet kit I think is really important, and also making sure that it's separate from everything else, for hygiene reasons. Okay, so that's that. Now my side pockets, there's probably nothing particularly exciting about those. In my usually on the right hand side I have a water bottle, but before I put the water bottle in, I usually have my gloves in there as well. I mean, there's probably a better place to keep them, but those gloves are just sun gloves, because I'm usually out in the sun quite a bit. I'll just put this stuff in as well. I don't always carry that many plastic bags. Okay, now in the left-hand side, the side pocket here, I have a water bottle, but I also have my water filter and another 1 litre fold-up bottle. Okay, that usually goes right down the bottom and to one side, and then the water bottle kind of fits beside that. And the other thing I have is a little bag. Another DCF bag, but anyway, I want to keep this stuff clean and separate, so I have a small lightweight DCF bag, and into that goes my my toothpaste, my toothbrush, which is cut down. Sometimes I use the bamboo ones as well, and some floss. This is Gorilla Floss, which somebody kindly put me onto in the comments in one of my other videos. It's great stuff. It's really tough, and so you can use it for a whole range of things apart from just flossing your teeth. So that all goes in there, and just because this is all sort of stuff which is clean and hygienic, I usually put my spoon in there as well. Okay, so my spoon goes in there, and it's actually, I won't show you now, but I actually attach it to one of the D-rings or loops on the side of my pack, and it sits in the side of the pocket like that, and then my water bottle goes in that pocket as well. So that's attached to there just so that I don't lose it. You know, I'm a bit paranoid about losing things, so I loop that through so that, you know, the bag doesn't fall out of the pocket and I don't lose those items. As far as the front of the pack goes, I have pockets on the front, and I'll show you. I'll start with this one here. This is, again, well, actually both of these pockets are made by Treadlight Gear, and in this one over here, so maybe I'll move away from the hygiene. Well, there's some hygiene stuff in here actually, but I'll start moving towards the electronics and show you what electronics I carry. So finishing off with the hygiene, underneath this left-hand pocket I have some hand sanitizer, okay, which just sits there, I can easily reach. I've also got my zinc, okay, which is sun protection, and in the front of the pocket, as well as the zinc, I have a compass, so a mirror compass, so that's handy. And then there's this back pocket that sort of folds down, which is actually waterproof. Okay, so this is a DCF pocket, folds down like that and protects from the rain. So in here I have my phone. Okay, that just slides in there. Now, if I didn't have these DCF pockets, what I'd probably do is put either some sort of dry bag or maybe just a Ziploc bag inside mesh pockets. So if I had a backpack with mesh pockets on, that's how I'd do that. And that way I could have my phone out most of the time when I needed it, but if it was going to rain, I could put it into something that was keep it protected. So I actually do this to transfer some of the weight to the front, as well as having stuff accessible. So the phone, particularly for you know, day hikes, if I'm using the Alltrails app, or maybe for longer hikes, using one of the maps for mapping or following a trail. That's easily accessible, so I can check things really quickly and easily just grab my phone out and see where I am and so forth. These pockets are perhaps a little bit small for... the other thing I'd like to do is have my maps, or have a map, a print map available as well for trips where that's required. Currently what I do is I put it into a pouch that goes on the front of my pack, or you know, you can do the same thing with a fanny pack or bum pack, whatever you want to call it. But you know, it's a little bit slower to get to with that. You have to unzip and take it out. It's all right, but you know, it'd be nice to have the option to have it on here. But I use these pockets to transfer some of the weight, as well as making things more accessible. So you know, I try and put fairly heavy items in these front pockets, so that I'm transferring some of the weight out of my pack. You could, you know, with the bottle pockets, you could have bottles on the front, but the only downside I think with that is that you know, as you drink during the day, you know, the weight's going down. So you know, I'd rather have something that's permanently the same weight, so that, you know, you've always got that transfer of weight. I mean, if I've got my drink bottles in the back pockets, you know, that's going to get lighter anyway during the day. So well, I'll fill them up at different times, but you know, it's not going to be heavy all of the time, whereas this stuff will be heavy all of the time. So I like to have it forward, have that constant weight. But obviously I also don't want it to be too bulky. So that's that pocket there. Some of my electronics in the form of my phone. I also sometimes have a camera on here, so I've got a camera clip. If I'm carrying a small camera with me, I might not do that for really long hikes where I'm trying to keep the weight down, but I love doing landscape photography, so having a camera with a small camera with a wide angle lens is really good, like this one here, little Fuji, just clips on there. Okay, moving on to my other electronics. So I've got this little dry bag on the right hand side, okay, and again this is a Treadlight gear dry bag. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, I just like their gear. Seems to be a bit, you know, fills a niche quite well. So for this one, again, I want some heavy stuff to bring forward. So I've got my electronics in here. So I have my Garmin InReach that goes down in here. I've got my power bank, little power bank. This is an Anker power bank. I'm actually looking at getting a Nightcore one as well, because not to carry both at the same time, but I can alternate them, you know, if I want to pick up gear halfway through a trip and not need to recharge. You know, maybe it's a drop box or something like that and you can't recharge, so I can have two chargers. But also the Nightcore is a little bit lighter as well, so I might choose to use that in preference to the Anker on trips where weight's going to be more of an issue. So I got that in there. I've got my charger. You know, there could be a better charger than that, but I've got that one for now anyway. It's too small and compact. And I've got my power cable, which actually has both USB-C and micro USB, so I can charge my power bank, but I can also charge things like my phone, my Nightcore headlamp, my camera if necessary. Basically, I've covered myself for all of the types of cables that I might need just with that one. And it's a longer cable as well, which means that you know, I can have the phone sitting on the floor if there isn't any table to sit on near the power plug or something like that. I've got a face mask in there as well. It just seems to be a good spot for it. And the final thing with the electronics that I commonly carry is my little Nightcore headlamp. Okay, and what I do is I actually attach that onto here. I won't go through the trouble of attaching it now, but it just sort of hooks on there, and then the line goes underneath to keep it out of the way, and I hook it through my top of my roll top closure there, and it just kind of sits there like that. And the good thing about that is I can actually switch it on and just walk with it there without having to put it on my head. So if, you know, it's just started to get dark or something like that and I'm still travelling, I don't necessarily have to put it on my head straight away. I can just have it sitting there and it'll light the path in front of me. So that works pretty well. Okay, so that's really all of the stuff that, you know, I would carry on a longer trip. I'll just mention a couple of other things while we're on the subject of pockets and, you know, external pockets, what I'm carrying on the outside of the pack. So I have these little clips that I've attached to my waist belt and also to just under these pockets here, little elastic straps on them. And what I do is I have a Z-Packs multi-pack, okay? So this is kind of, I don't have a bottom pocket on this pack. I'd love to try that, so I'm thinking of trying a pack with one just to see how it goes. But so this pocket then becomes my place for putting my snacks during the day, and also again to transfer some of the weight forward, I put my cook kit in there. Okay, so that sort of sits on one side. I might also put my first aid kit that I showed you last week. In fact, it's probably in here now. Okay, and also, you know, ditty items, if people want to call them that, so I could put them in here as well. You know, things that I might want to access during the day as well, like maps and so forth. So that's, you know, something I would commonly do on a longer hike, not necessarily a short hike. And yeah, I can't really show you that now, but it basically just sits quite comfortably there, and the weight's distributed onto my waist, so there's not very much weight on the shoulder packs, on the shoulder straps. Okay, so that's pretty much the basics. I might mention also, while I'm on the subject, I do have, if I'm doing a shorter trip, like a day hike or maybe an overnight hike where I want to carry a lot of camera gear, I do actually have a different waist pouch, which I can carry my camera that I showed you before, but also a lens. So the two lenses I typically carry with me for my smaller camera setup are a 16mm, and this is I believe an 80mm macro. So this will serve as a longer lens, so it's about 120mm equivalent on a crop sensor. It's an excellent lens. It's a high quality macro lens, but it will do that longer stuff as well for landscape or whatever. Sometimes wildlife if the animals are close enough. So that gives me a fair bit of flexibility between those two lenses. I've also got like my maybe some spare batteries in there, and the spare memory cards and that sort of stuff. So that just sits in basically the same place that the multi-pack would. Okay, in the same way, I just basically take off the multi-pack and put this one on instead. I can also attach, if I want to just carry this by itself, I can also attach a strap, and it's the same with the multi-pack. If I want to have like a small bag for going into town or something like that, I can convert that into a bag. I don't have to take my entire pack. Alright, so that's pretty much it. The only other thing I'll mention is probably a bit sort of irrelevant to most people, but if I'm, and this I wouldn't do this for a multi-day trip, but if I'm doing a bit of photography and I'm using this as a day pack, if I'm doing wildlife stuff, I might also carry a 200 to 500, which is up to 750mm equivalent wide angle lens. This is my SLR setup, so it's pretty heavy. It's a very bulky thing, but you know, I can usually get away for maybe 10Ks or 20Ks, something like that, just on a day trip, by having that around my neck and just down the side there. But since I'm covering electronics, I may as well mention that, but it's obviously not something that would be relevant for a longer hike. Okay, so I think that's pretty much it. I guess the only other thing I'll say is that if you don't have one of these multi-packs, you know, and your pack doesn't have a waist strap or something like that, you know, you could use you could do a similar sort of thing with a bum pack. Okay, this is a Hilltop Designs bum pack. Oh, I should say, oh no, that's Z-Packs actually. That's the one I use for my camera gear. So Hilltop Designs make these sort of folding bum packs, roll top closure ones. So they seem pretty good. You could do that for. You could use that if you didn't have a hip belt. Yep. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show you today. So hopefully that was a reasonably quick video. You know, as with my previous video, just be aware that, you know, not all of this stuff is things that I always carry, but there are the basics there, like my electronics. The electronics in this pocket are pretty much a constant. You know, having the power bank, having the torch, having the charger, having the Garmin InReach, and you know, it's pretty much a constant what I have in this side as well. So the compass, the phone, and you know, the other couple of items there, and of course the toiletries kit, everything that I have in the back. So I'll give you a few weights, and for the next video I'll probably look at something like my clothing, or I might move on to the cook kits and show you those as well. I'm gradually sort of working through all of the items. I'll probably do a bit of a summary video at the end which kind of puts everything together, but I thought going through things in a bit more detail would be useful for some people at least. Okay, thanks folks, and see you next time.